We in here. We in here.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, to the most low budget, low rent podcast humanly possible. Draw for the Squadcast, featuring today just myself, Lou, as the rest of the Squadcast is indisposed. I'm assuming they're testing out some of the stuff we talked about in Insecure last night. I could be wrong. I could be just speculating on their extracurricular activities tonight, but hey, that's what I do. So tonight, instead of our regular topic show, we're going to focus solely on the hip-hop classic album, Late Registration, by Mr. Kanye West, aka hip-hop's biggest asshole. But this album was, I wouldn't say the coming out party to the asshole. We were coming off of the year before, College Dropout. Everybody loved Kanye. He seemed a little arrogant, but no one was 100% sure because he was still that little dude with the backpack and producing hot beats for everyone humanly possible. But no one knew he would grow to become like the egotistical maniac that most people think he is. No, to me, he's just a highly confused guy who happens to be a musical genius, and most geniuses are crazy, and he's just a little crazy. But again, focusing on the 12-year anniversary of Late Registration, the album to me that changed the way hip-hop was viewed and made. So let's get into the album. The album dropped August 30th, 2005, hence 12-year anniversary being today. The production, because I think that's where I want to start at, is the production on this album. I mean, before this drop, I don't believe you heard any hip-hop album sound this lush. I think lush is a good word there. This lush with sound. I think it's because he picked up the great producer, John Bryant, who at the time was coming off of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is, again, if you have not seen that movie, check that joint out. Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet, awesome movie. But with Kanye hearing some of those sounds he made, he felt, if I hook up with this guy, he can give me something different. Because while everybody loved College Dropout, that sound had become the sound of hip-hop. So everybody stole it after that. It was like, it was nice and fresh to do the little soul samples at first, but you know, you're coming off of the Blueprint, which was huge, which made Kanye West the guy and the producer everybody wanted to work with, along with Just Blaze. So everybody at that point began to copy the style that Kanye West brought into fruition with College Dropout. So 6 months after that drops, everybody does that sound. And Kanye's like, nah, I need something different. So hooks up with John Bryant. They go away for, I think, a year total in production that this album was in to craft this masterpiece of long ass songs. Like, I don't care if you've never listened to a hip hop album before, this is still probably the longest hip hop album ever made. Well, at least it times it feels that way. It may not be as long as I think it is, but damn, like when you get to track 12, you're like, this motherfucker not over yet? But not in a bad way, not in a way like it needs to end now, more in a way like, dog, like how much music could you give us? Like, nigga, did you just give me a song that you stopped spitting bars on 3 minutes ago and I'm just stuck listening to the rest of the beat? That was this album. Again, Late Registration. If you haven't heard it, pick it up. If you haven't heard it, you don't really love hip-hop music or yourself at this point. So, get to the introduction of the album here. First track out the album, first track he released to the public was Diamonds of Sierra Leone, which could be the weakest track on the album. Production-wise, it's the best. It's grand. It's It's hip hop meets James Bond, which is what he was going for at the time. So it made perfectly good sense. He wanted something so big and so undeniable that people would just have to listen to it. That could be a good thing for most people, could be a bad thing. For him, it ended up being a good thing, but not nearly as good as the other singles he released off the album. But let me not digress from the greatness at times of Diamonds of Sierra Leone's production. I mean, from the samples to the orchestra to some of the hardest bars Kanye West has ever spit. Like the line about him picking up where Jay left off is still to me like one of the lines that gives me goosebumps every time I hear it. And he chose that to introduce everyone to an album that when you hear it, at times that song feels out of place. So jump quickly into the second single off the album, which is Gold Digger. This song right now is so irritating. Like if I listen to this album, I think this is the only song I skip past. Like I can't listen to this song anymore. And that's because unless you were in a rock or under a rock or in a cave or Elizabeth Smart, I'm assuming we was in that time period, you heard this song everywhere. Pepsi commercials, you hear this song. Toy commercials, you hear this song. At church, you hear this song. Like this song played everywhere humanly possible. And it just so happens to come out at the time that Jamie Foxx is in the process of winning his Oscar playing Ray. So he comes out, you think it's a Ray sample. You look at everything, you realize, no, that's Jamie Foxx singing as Ray Charles on the track. Gold Digger is huge, like beyond big. I'm not sure Kanye West knew that Gold Digger would become the track that it was. You would think he would have had a foresight because it sounds like an undeniable hit. But like back in 05, I mean, the hip hop landscape wasn't as such where you can just throw an of extremely old school sample on a track and make it a hit anymore. You know, hip hop had became a little harder since he dropped College Dropout. Between some of the other awesome albums that dropped in 2005 that we'll discuss a little bit later. But I think it made it a little tougher for a track like this to exist. But that infectious lyricism that Kanye West had on this track, along with Jamie Foxx, made this joint amazing. Clubs popping, everything going, niggas getting free white women. It was that hard of a track. And then he followed that up with Heard Him Say, which I'm gonna say introduced black people, to Adam Levine, because most of us had not really listened to Maroon 5. I know I had, like, you know, even back then, I was a huge fan of Maroon 5, but I'm rare. So it ain't too many black people who was like, oh God, let me get this new Maroon 5 record. I'm gonna blast this joint in my car. Like, nah, none of that existed then. So to hear his voice on that track was amazing. And it brought the bridge to me to College Dropout, because it sounded so much like the When It All Falls Down of the College Dropout, of that like nice soulful voice over awesome production. Again, it was a lot more lush. I'm gonna use that word a lot now too, lush, because that's what the sound brings out to me. So it was a lot more lush than anything on College Dropout. You could tell the production value was tenfold to that album, especially on this track. Like, while Diamonds of Sierra Leone, like, beat was amazing and amazing in a different way, this one, Heard Him Say, sounds like I could have had, or he could have had, I'm gonna say, because clearly I didn't make the song. He could have had like a Marvin Gaye singing on this track, and it would have been amazing. Or just any deep soul singer pick Adam Levine's voice and say, this is the voice I need on this track. Awesome. Freaking killed it. The last single to me that mattered, because I'm gonna skip over Drive Slow. I know Drive Slow was a song. I know people like Drive Slow as a song. I'm not a particular fan of it. I can listen to it because the beat is nice. And Paul Wall kind of goes a little hard on there, but it's not something that I'm gonna listen to like just on my free time. I'm not gonna like pick up this album and say, "Oh my God, I need to hear Drive Slow." Like, no, you can skip it for that purpose. But Touch the Sky, which embodied everything of the 70s and hip hop at the same time. Like it made you feel nostalgic about that time period while still going hard and introducing to a lot of people the guy who would a couple of years from then drop the best hip hop album of the year, Mr. Lupe Fiasco, who at the time was killing mixtapes, but a lot of people didn't know who Lupe was. He wasn't like the guy who he eventually became to be. So it was kind of dope that Kanye reached out and put him on the track, especially him on this album, because this album has so many big features. And Lupe is not considered a big feature on this album, but that Touch the Sky verse, yep. He's like up there for a verse of this album, best verse of this album, possibly. So now that we done went through the singles, let's go a little deeper into some of these tracks. Clearly, again, he starts it off as usual with the Bernie Mac sample, the Wake Up Mr. West. I think he said at one point that this was supposed to have been the second of a 4-part series of the like school, college days. I know it was college dropout, late registration, graduation. And I can't remember what the name of the fourth one was supposed to be, but everybody knows the story that I think his mom passed away, and that's when everything switched and changed. And instead of getting this series continued, we got 808s and Heartbreak, which is something else. On another day, we're going to have to talk about that album and how that album gave us Drake and Tory Lanez and all these other singing, rapping people, and also how it's a bridge from The Love Below. But I digress. Let me not get too distracted. Just had to bring that up real quick to y'all. So again, heard him say Touch the Sky, Gold Digger. It's amazing how he lined these up as singles to fit the album. Track 7 is where I think the album switches tempo a little bit. And that could be because Common on the My Way Home, which is a prelude to another great album that dropped that year, which could be my favorite hip hop album that dropped that year, which is Common's B. And like this was a song that Common dropped to prove to everybody, like, dude, I still got it. I can still kill this game whenever I want to. Next up was Crack Music featuring The Game, who is unnecessary on this song. Like, you see The Game feature on here, and at the point that this album dropped, Game had dropped Documentary, so he was like the hot new dude. But he wasn't needed for the hook. Like, and I think I've heard in subsequent interviews that he wanted to put a verse on there, and Kanye said no. Kanye was like, I just want the hook. I don't want you to do a verse. And while Kanye goes hard on this track, like extremely hard, especially, how we killed our Black Panthers, Ronald Reagan cooked up an answer. You hear that? What Gil Scott was hearing when we told him Rosa Heroines got hooked on heroin. Like, some of the hardest bars possible is what Kanye spit on this track. So it would have been great to hear The Game spit on this too, but we all can't get our dreams answered, I guess. And also to hear a very interesting fact that Crack Music, the beat, the production, was originally for Diddy's Press Play album, which is, again, I'm gonna sidetrack myself a little bit. is an underrated album for Diddy. And it's hard to say underrated with Diddy because most people don't believe his music is good, but that was one of the few albums he had great production and great writers. And he said crack music just didn't fit that album. I would disagree with him because he had a song like Everything I Love on there too, which I think pairs well with crack music, but I'm happy he didn't keep it because we got to hear Mr. West like really go off on it. Then you had Roses next, which is a really sad song that I think depicts the death of his grandmother. It's the death of his grandmother and him, I think, coming to terms with how famous he was becoming, which I think wasn't an easy thing for him. And now we see it. Now we see that he's not comfortable being famous. Even though he's extremely famous, he's not really comfortable being famous. But back in 05, if you listen to Roses and you hear the things he says on here about being asked for autographs at odd times and things of that nature, he's showing you from the beginning he was, I think, never comfortable with being famous. And this was just like this was showing you what 8 years beforehand, the guy that he would become because of his uncomfortableness with being famous. So track 10, Bring Me Down, featuring Brandy. Something most people don't know. Bring Me Down is a old Kanye West verse from, I want to say, the mixtape before he dropped College Dropout. So the verse was always tough though. And he added Brandy to it with a great production, and you get a song that, in all honesty, a song that's good, but a song that's unnecessary for the album. But it's still good. It's still a good song, but you could have skipped it. Number 11, Addiction. Great song. Like that whole hook. And, yeah, I'm gonna do that a lot because I like verbalizing when I'm thinking shit. So that like that whole junk is so dope. And again, this was at a time where people wasn't doing music like this. Like now, if Addiction dropped, Addiction would still be good. Matter of fact, if Addiction dropped now from like one of these new little dudes, the nigga with X's in his names, the little pumps, little Easy Vert, Uzi Vert, whatever these niggas' names be. If they drop this track now, this track could be like a top 20 hit. And just to think this was I'm not gonna call it a throwaway, but just a deep cut on a great album instead of the hit that it could have been and that it could be now 12 years later is amazing. So skipping the skip, and we're gonna go right back to Diamonds Sierra Leone, the remix, which I know I said earlier that Lupe had the toughest verse probably on his album, best verse on his album with Touch the Sky. But I'd be damn if like Jay-Z and all his greatness at this time, I think he was still retired. He changed everybody's game when he dropped that verse. Like I got it from here, yay, damn. Like I'm a businessman. I'm not a businessman. I'm a businessman. Let me handle my business. Damn. Like he got on his track and Kanye killed his verse on here. And the moment Jay starts rapping, you forget that this is a Kanye West song. And that could be the problems with Diamonds of Sierra Leone. Like the original was real tough, really tough. And the remix was tough. The problem is, if you take all of Kanye West's verses from both of them, the remix and original, they all like don't come close to comparing to Jay's verse. And I believe this is a situation where Jay overtook Kanye's song and took away some of the greatness of the song because he took Kanye's song. Like I don't think that's a deep dive in any way humanly possible. I think people understand that at times it's just real hard when a great MC spits on your song because he could kill it for you. Kind of like Kanye West did much later on to Jay-Z on Run This Town. But on Diamonds Turning On, yeah, Jay killed him. Track 14 was We Major featuring Nas. I mean, I remember when this came out, the album, and this was around the time where Jay and Nas was beefing really, really hard. And a lot of news that came out that both of them were on Kanye West's album is that he purposely put their tracks right behind each other. And he did it because, he was a innocent dude who met Nas for the first time ever while recording this album. And he thought Jay would have a problem with him working with Nas because of their situation, and vice versa. He thought Nas wouldn't want to work with him because, he's Jay-Z's man, and Nas ain't working with Jay-Z's man because Nas is beefing with Jay-Z. But when Jay, being at the time the president of Def Jam, gave the okay to the song, Kanye thought it would be good. As he said, I can't get them on the song together, so the best thing I could do is put their songs back to back. So to me, it feels like they're on the song together. I know that sounds stupid, but this 2005 Kanye, this is the George Bush doesn't like black people Kanye. So at times, he said things that didn't really make sense. Like, I don't know how you got the feeling like they were on the track together because their songs played back to back, but it's a nice, cool, neat little story in hip hop history. But We Major as a track is amazing. And production wise, I want to say it's the best track on the album and the longest track on the album. Remember when I said at the beginning, like, nigga, did you just give us a song where you stopped spitting bars and then had us just listen to music for like 3 minutes? Yep. That's We Major. Just like, nah, nigga, you just gonna listen to this music. You just gonna take this shit. That's how it was on that jump. But he did close it with a really good verse, but not nearly as tough as the verses before that. But it was a long ass interlude. Like that whole production could be used for like it felt like he was going to the opera if you hear that jump now. So next song, track 16, Hey Mama. This song is really dope. It took on clearly later on in his career a much different meaning. And I'm gonna say personally for me, like growing up as a kid of a single mother and being a little bit of a mama's boy, like this was like one of the best tracks ever. Like I think it's every kid's fantasy in a way that has a loving mother. It's their fantasy in a way to show the world how much that person means to you. And that's what he did on this track. Like he killed it while letting everyone know, like, my mom is like great, awesome, the best thing in the world. And when you hear him spitting on it, you can't help but just like feel warm and fuzzy inside. And again, this was 05, I'm sorry. This was 05 when not a lot of other hip hop music made you feel warm and fuzzy. Not like in the heart, maybe in other like secret, dirty places, but not like in your heart like this one did. So, Hey Mama, still to this day, awesome track, great track, deeply meaningful. I wouldn't know how the hell he could ever listen to that song, because if what happened with his mom happened with my mom and I made this type of track while she was alive, I could never listen to it again. So skip to the next one, Gone, which is the first time before the Watch the Throne LP with the Otis sample. This is the first time I think he sampled Otis Redding this clearly. And with Consequence and Cameron both given A1 top tier hip hop verses on this jump, along with Kanye giving a great verse. Like this is the true hip hop song of this album. Like you had other songs that, whether it be the Diamonds remix or the We Major or Touch the Sky, even Drive Slow a little bit, that had other MCs on it, but not like this. Like on Gone, all three of them killed it. Like that knock knock, who's there? Killer Cam, Killer who? Killer Cam. Like that junk is ridiculous. That's something like, again, if you haven't heard it, or if it's been years since, because again, this album's 12 years old now. If it's been years since you heard Gone, turn that joint on. That joint is still to this day will rattle anybody's trunk and just make you like decide that day that you can rap. You most likely can, and you shouldn't. But it's gonna make you feel like you can, and that's kind of dope. So the album ends again. Diamonds Are Certainly On, track 20. Yes, I said track 20. So coming off of the hip hop albums of late, especially like 444, which is the album I can't put down right now. The point that I'm getting on track 20 tells you how long this motherfucking album is. Crazy. But quality is never a letdown on it. And I think that's what makes people, that's what makes people accept that this joint is like 21 tracks. So last track of the album is Late. Late for a while, especially when the album dropped, was like my favorite song, because like between that hook, the chorus, the sample, that I'll be late for that, like that whole jump, man. And then it get the perfect color people line. I use that jump on my friends now. Like I'll be there in 5 minutes. 5 hours later, I'll be there in 5 minutes. Go ahead, ride with it. Like that jump, or that two dykes that look Christine Milian type, like tough, extremely tough lines. Like I think it just felt, it was a perfect way to close out the album. And it's weird that it's a bonus track, but it's the perfect way to close out the album. And it led perfectly until Graduation, which is the next one in this School Days trilogy. Wow. Yep. I don't know if another nigga said it. I'm gonna name that junk School Day Trilogies. Kanye West. Yep. So we done went over all the tracks. Production wise, Kanye West kills it. I could argue that this is definitely one of the 50 greatest hip hop albums. It may be one of the 20 best hip hop albums ever made. And that's like not me going off the top of my head, because that list is tough to do off the dome without really thinking about it. But I think I can say comfortably, based solely off of the production value of this album, that this is a top 20 hip hop album of all time. He's definitely a top 20 hip hop artist, while not a top 20 MC. Matter of fact, rephrase that here. Kanye West is a top 10 hip hop artist. He is not a top 10 MC, but he's a top 10 hip hop artist. And this is a top 20 of all time album. So let's get to the point of where Kanye West was commercially in his success with this album. Like, and all this shit is off the dome. I kind of got a good memory, some of it. I kind of don't. I ain't fitting to be researching record sales, because to me, in all honesty, record sales don't matter. But I know it really shows people like how successful the album was. So I remember when College Dropout came out. I think it debuted at like number 2, I want to say. I think it sold like 423 or 26,000 copies. And he came back with Late Registration, which pushed 860,000 copies his first week. And the only reason I can remember that number is because it played into beef with 50 Cent. Not beef, but the sales showdown with 50 Cent and Kanye West. Like for people who don't remember, the same week that he dropped this album, Tony Yayo dropped his debut album, which is something of a felon. I don't suck balls, but at the time, with 50 being the biggest hip hop artist and this is being his main man, there was some discussion on could Yayo sell more than Kanye West? I mean, like Yayo had the big single that, like, nigga, you know who you fucking with. Like that whole jump, even though it played way more like a 50 Cent song than the Yayo song, but it was real discussions about that, which later on bridged 50 saying, well, you beat my man in sales, but you can't beat me in sales. And we all know how that happened or how that ended in history. But this started it when Yayo and Kanye both dropped albums on the same day. And Kanye like made Yayo irrelevant with his album. So Late Registration, huge hit. Think it went double, maybe triple platinum, which for that time period was great for anybody in hip hop to do those type of numbers, especially that 860,000. Like those are like close to Doggy Style numbers, Doggy Style debut numbers. So for the album to later on push, I think it did put it, but it went triple platinum. Is amazing, amazing. So again, there we have it. I'm trying to think about diving deeper into some of the meanings of the lyrics, but nah, fuck that. I want to do that. I want to talk about hip hop as a whole for that year, like 2004. 2005. Keep on saying that. I don't know why I'm getting them years confused. I think I'm getting old. But 2005 in hip hop, like, is one of the toughest years humanly possible. Beyond Kanye dropping this classic. You also had the beginning of the year, The Game dropped a documentary, which is as tough of an album as you can get. Again, I'm not going to give no track by track anything of that album, but the point that dropped the same year that Kanye West dropped is crazy. Between that, 50 Cent dropped a Massacre that year, which trumped everything in hip hop. Matter of fact, trumped almost everything in music and the way it debuted, even though it was so much weaker than Get Rich or Die Trying. But nevertheless, it was a great moment in time that you had The Game drop, you had 50 drop that year. Man, you had Beanie Siegel drop the Becoming that year off of the Kanye West album, which is all the same. All of that also centered around the Rockefeller breakup, like dopeness altogether. You had Bun B drop Trill that year, which if you haven't heard Trill, or if you're sleeping on Trill and thinking that joint not a good album, come on, man, you don't love hip hop music. Trill was like one of the first Southern albums that I was like, man, I could play. Not made by Scarface or anybody, like not made by Scarface. I'm gonna say that I felt like I could listen to all the way through and expect A1 lyricism at all times. And Bun B killed it. Then you also had the introduction of the world to Mr. Young Jeezy, whether it was the Boys in the Hood album, which to me is like so underrated. It's not a great album, but it's a really good album with some A1 verses from Big Duke. If you don't know who he is, again, he's a member of Boys in the Hood. It was Big Duke, Jody Breeze, Young Jeezy. I forget the other guy. It was four of them. I'm not going to say he's not important. I just can't remember his name. But like that album not only introduced me to Young Jeezy, it also introduced me to Rick Ross because it's a track on there that has both of them two on there. The joint is so tough of a track. I think it's like track number 14. Bitches in Business, I think is the name of the joint. Tough ass song. But Jeezy also dropped his debut that year, which was also tough. Like that Thug Motivation 101. Like if you needed a Southern Street album, that was it. Like Trill had his street moments, but his lyricism stood out more than the streetness of the album, if that makes sense to you. But on Thug Motivation, yeah, like if you doubted the person that Jeezy was, you didn't doubt it after hearing Thug Motivation 101. Like that joint has some straight A1 coke rhymes on it. Like Hustler Dreams type shit on there. That joint is so dope. And I didn't fully appreciate it when it came out in 05. It took for me to appreciate Jeezy as an MC and to appreciate this album in like 2012, 2013. So just to think that it came out the same year that all this other great hip hop came out, that's crazy. Then you also had Little Kim's best lyrical album came out this year, The Naked Truth, which I think Source gave it 5 mics. And it was the first female album to get 5 mics. I would say that La Bella Mafia should have gotten 5 mics by Lil Kim too, but I understand that on Naked Truth, Kim was like spitting some of ridiculous lyrics on here. Like, if anybody thought like Kim as an MC was only as good because of hardcore, nah. Hardcore is a classic, and it's a moment in hip hop that you always have to remember. The Naked Truth was her saying, lyrically, I can dust not only female MCs, I can dust most of these niggas, and y'all gonna respect me for it. That's how hard The Naked Truth is. So again, that may be another album you've never heard. Also that year, we got introduced to the guy who would eventually become the best rapper alive and become the best rapper alive based off of that album, which is The Carter 2, which dropped in, I think, December 05. And like, I remember not particularly liking Lil Wayne. And then I remember hearing Go DJ, and I'm like, okay, I give him a little credit. And then The Carter 2 came out. And Fireman came out. And Hustle Music and all them jokes. And you was like, dude, like, I'm seeing the beginning of a great MC. And that's kind of weird to say the beginning of a great MC because he was like 3 or 4 albums in at this point. But like, this was right before he just murdered everybody. Because right after the Carter 2 dropped, like Wayne went on a good 5-year run where he was untouchable. And that's more impressive because if you consider the other MCs that were out when he went on that run that made him untouchable. But it all started with the Carter 2. Like that cemented him as the MC that he would eventually become. And then the last album I'm gonna say for hip hop that dropped that year, Be by Common. Like, Be by Common is kind of a branch off of Late Registration. I mean, when you hear the stories about that, a lot of the beats on B were beats that Kanye West passed on Late Registration because he didn't feel he could do them justice. And for Common to come in and like murder track after track after track, it was almost like if you hadn't listened to Common Sense, like Water for Chocolate, I'm sorry. you would have forgotten how great of an MC he was. If you would have just listened to like that Electric Circus album and some of them other Jones where he was like, it was around time he was fucking Erykah Badu, and everybody knows you fuck Erykah Badu, you go a little spacey, you got like, it takes time to get over that pussy, and that Jones spaces you out, and it spaced him out until B came out, and he dropped a corner, which is tough. I can't even describe it in any other way. Like the moment you hear that, I wish I could get this feeling. I wish I could, like, the moment that Jones drop, that on the corner niggas rap, like dope. And to hear that Kanye West had made that track for Late Registration, that Fateful, and I think Go. Wow, he made those for him kind of on Late Registration, but he passed on them. Kind of crazy that he passes on them, and then him and Common get together and they mold it to make a great album that B was. That's crazy. So we done went over hip hop, 2005, all the great albums. We also had some really great R&B, because I think hip hop and R&B will always be linked together. You had some great R&B artists come out that year. You had like Rihanna's debut album came out a week before Kanye West dropped Late Registration. That's crazy. Even crazier, later that year is when Chris Brown dropped his debut album. So Rihanna drops a debut album. Chris Brown drops a debut album. And 4 years later, Chris Brown beats the shit out of Rihanna. Is that a coincidence? I think not. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. But again, it was a great year for R&B. You also had 112 fall off the world completely with that Pain and Pleasure. I think that joint was named. That album fucking sucked. You had Mary J drop her biggest album ever with The Breakthrough, and we had to hear her cry for another 2 to 3 years with that fucking song. You had Jamie Foxx drop a debut album, which I think he needs to credit Kanye West too, because people believed he could be an artist after Late Registration with Gold Digger. And in that first single, because I think his album was named Unpredictable, but I think that was the second single. I remember him having a single with Kanye West at first, but the song wasn't that good. But he dropped his debut that year. You had Faith Evans give the awesome comeback with the First Lady album that year. You had Vivian Green, who, if you don't know who Vivian Green is, because now I'm giving you a deeper dive into R&B and some of the people in R&B. Like Vivian Green is one of the best singers I've ever heard live. Her albums are consistently good, but she dropped her sophomore, I think it was her sophomore album in 2005. With that I Gotta Go, I Gotta Leave jump. Like, I would sing that right now, but I'm not giving y'all that much, not tonight. But that song, fucking awesome. Keisha Cole that dropped her debut that year. I know that's not saying much now because, it's Keisha Cole. But back then, like, the way it is, I think that's the name of that jump. That jump was like super dope until you got to the point where she was singing off key. That love song, that jump to this day. I hate any thought. Sorry, called women thoughts. But if you sing that song, that's what you are. You need to accept it. The world accepts you as that. Alicia Keys dropped that Unplug album. This was the beginning of her screaming. I think so. It was that Unbreakable jump. Like, eat them like Argentina. Like that jump. I think this was the beginning of her screaming until she got on fire. Not like sales wise. I mean, literally when like, this girl, like that jump right there. Like, this was the progression of her screaming. Still a dope album though. But a lot of the songs she screamed on and she didn't sing on. And I think that's when she got comfortable screaming instead of singing. And then we get the shitty albums that happen after that. And I think the last album that came out that year that meant anything, and for me, and it's saying a lot because, I'm going to sound a little soft here. The album that meant the most that came out that year was The Emancipation of Mimi by Mariah Carey. Up until this point, I had never even heard of Mariah Carey album because, you know, she's a Trisket. So if you don't know what Trisket means, I'm gonna need y'all to check out the Carmichael show. It's in the episode. His girlfriend says that someone called her a Trisket. I am not gonna go into the details of that because that sounds racist if I do, even though I am black. Not doing that. But I didn't really listen to Mariah Carey. I didn't give her much credit. I know she was sleeping with a lot of hip hop artists before this, like when she broke up with Tommy Mottola. But I think at the point that this album dropped, her career was over, and she dropped this album, and this album is great. Probably the best album of 2005. I know it's the top selling album of 2005. But it's probably the best album of 2005. This and Late Registration are two that I don't have to be in any particular mood to go back and listen to. Like, I got to feel like smacking a nigga to go back and listen to a documentary or The Becoming. Like, you know, you got those albums that you got to be in certain moods to listen to. But these two, like, you can just throw on because they're great music. So I know I ventured off a little bit. And this is what happens when the rest of the squad ain't around and I got to talk by myself. Like, if I talk with myself and I just and I am alone with my own thoughts, like, man, I can ramble forever, Holmes. And since them niggas decided not to be on the podcast tonight and left me all by my lonesome, I decided to do a little, I'm not gonna call it a deep dive. Man, fuck it. I'm gonna call it like a 30 for 30, Joe. I don't know if I've been on for 30 minutes yet, but I'm gonna call this a 30 for 30 on the Kanye West Late Registration album and the state of hip hop and R&B at the same time in 2005. So, yeah, that's what we're gonna do. See what I mean by my thoughts. The shit just goes away on me at times. It's cool though. It's cool. It's all right. But thank you all for listening. Again, if you haven't heard Late Registration before, you should kill yourself, literally. You hate hip-hop music. I understand that if you've not heard Late Registration. But if it's been a couple of years since you heard Late Registration, man, you need to pick that joint up, check it back out. Enjoy the genius that is Kanye West before he became the man who knows he's a genius named Kanye West. And just like sit back and throw the joint on. And again, it's not an album that you got to be in any particular mood to listen to because of the production on it. So, I mean, it's like, well, no matter what time you listen to this joint, just say, man, let me listen to Lou. Let me pull out this Late Registration album. I ain't heard this joint in a minute. And just enjoy Kanye West. All right, good people. This was cool. Hopefully next week, the squad will not be tied up having adult activities or performing adult activities. I don't know what they're doing, but hopefully them niggas will be prepared so we can all hook up again and do this instead of having Lou do another deep dive into another motherfucking album. Peace, people.